Welcome to the Explainer. We've all been there, right? Staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, just watching the clock tick by, desperate for even a few hours of rest before the day begins. Today, we're putting two massively popular sleep aids head-to-head, melatonin and ASMR. Now, sales for sleep aids and nighttime supplements are literally at an all-time high, but we're going to cut straight through all that marketing noise today. We're taking a completely objective, clinical look at what the research actually shows. Which one of these really helps you sleep? Well, the honest answer is far more interesting than either side wants to admit, and it might just completely change your nightly routine. Okay, let's start with a number that might honestly shock you, especially for someone who regularly relies on supplements to fall asleep. 7 minutes. When researchers at Yale pooled the best clinical trials in a 2013 meta-analysis, which, by the way, is essentially the gold standard of scientific review, looking at over 1,600 subjects, they found that melatonin only helps the average person fall asleep about 7 minutes faster. That's it. Not an hour, not 30 minutes. Just 7 minutes. For a supplement touted as an absolute miracle sleep cure, a 7-minute head start is a pretty humbling reality check. And the plot thickens even further. According to a 2023 JAMA research letter, a staggering 88% of melatonin gummies analyzed were inaccurately labeled. The vast majority contained anywhere from 74 to 347% of the labeled amount. That means you could be taking nearly 4 times your intended dose, which ironically can disrupt your sleep cycle even more. And get this, one product analyzed contained 0 melatonin whatsoever, meaning you might just be eating an overpriced regular gummy bear right before bed, banking on a placebo effect. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the melatonin reality check, and what melatonin actually does. So to understand why those clinical numbers look the way they do, we have to look at what's actually happening inside the body. Melatonin is a hormone released by the brain that acts as a timing cue to signal darkness to your circadian clock. Think of it this way. It's not some sedative sledgehammer designed to just knock you out cold. It's simply a naturally produced hormone that sends a subtle biological message to your internal clock saying, hey, the sun went down. It's nighttime. Let's begin the wind-down routine. It sets the stage for sleep, but it definitely doesn't force the curtains to close. Because it operates as a timing cue, it has very specific, powerful uses. It's absolutely ideal for jet lag, shift work, or a delayed sleep phase. If your internal clock is literally broken or out of sync, say your body thinks it's noon because you just flew across 3 time zones, but it's actually 3 a.m. local time, melatonin is remarkably effective at nudging that biological clock back into place. It tells your confused brain that darkness has actually arrived. But here's the reality for most of us. If you have classic insomnia, that incredibly frustrating scenario where you're lying in bed at the right time, you're physically exhausted, but your brain just simply will not switch off, melatonin provides a modest 7-minute timing nudge, not a powerful sedative knockout. The clinical evidence shows its effects are very real, for sure, but they're completely mismatched if you're looking for an immediate off switch for an overactive mind. Moving right along to Section 2, the science of ASMR, turning down the arousal. Now, this is our underdog challenger, and it operates on an entirely different biological system. ASMR actually flips the off switch by lowering in-the-moment arousal. When your nervous system is stuck in high gear, when your heart's beating a little too fast, your jaw's clenched tight, and your mind is just racing through tomorrow's to-do list, ASMR directly targets that arousal. It calms you down by changing your sensory environment without requiring you to ingest any substances at all. It doesn't touch your biological clock, it actively targets your physical tension. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Let's look at the actual numbers here, because the data is just fascinating. 3.14 beats per minute. In a 2018 controlled study from the University of Sheffield, researchers found that ASMR responders experienced a significant average heart rate drop of 3.14 beats per minute while engaging with ASMR content. Now, a 3 beat per minute drop might sound kind of small on paper, but in the context of human physiology, that is a massive, highly significant shift toward the resting state required to actually initiate sleep. Right, so that number isn't just some isolated fun fact. It's part of a much broader set of physiological evidence. ASMR lowers heart rate, increases skin conductance, and directly engages the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is your body's literal rest and digest mechanism. It's the direct counterbalance to that anxious fight or flight stress response.
These measurable physical changes are the exact biological fingerprint of your body's relaxation branch officially switching on. No pill, no hormone, just specific auditory and visual triggers.
And the cognitive impact is just as profound. From a 2022 Journal of Affective Disorders study of over 1,000 adults, researchers Smedka and Wiggs noted ASMR significantly reduced arousal, most strongly in those with combined insomnia and depression symptoms. So, what does this all mean? It proves that ASMR can deeply penetrate the cognitive and emotional rumination, that endless loop of racing thoughts that a simple darkness signaling hormone simply cannot touch. It actually quiets the mind rather than just dimming the lights. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds into our head-to-head comparison, clock versus arousal. It's time for a truly objective clinical matchup. Here is the big paradigm shift. In one corner, we have melatonin. It's a hormone, it resets your clock, and it's fantastic for things like jet lag or shift work. In the other corner, ASMR. It utilizes sound and sensation, it flips the off switch, and it is incredible for racing minds. This distinction is absolutely vital. One tool is strictly meant for a misaligned circadian rhythm, while the other is the dedicated off switch for a tired but wired brain. But of course, we have to objectively look at the caveats and limitations for both. For melatonin, the limitations are its modest 7-minute benefit and those wildly inconsistent labeling issues we discussed, with potential side effects like next-day grogginess or really intense vivid dreams. For ASMR, there are essentially zero side effects, but its limitations are a smaller, newer research base. Also, only about 25 to 30% of people actually feel those physical tingles. Though researchers note that even without the tingles, a vast majority of users still experience deep, measurable relaxation. Neither tool is a magic cure for chronic, severe insomnia, but they are incredibly powerful levers to pull. Which brings us to Section 4, Building Your Sleep Routine, the Playbook. So if you're actually dealing with a shifted clock, here's your smart melatonin usage guide. You absolutely want to use the lowest effective dose. Usually just 0.5 to 1 milligram is plenty. More is not better here. It just increases next-day grogginess. You also need to take it a few hours before bed, not as some last-second knockout pill, because it literally needs time to communicate that timing cue to your brain. And crucially, buy third-party tested brands. That is exactly how you avoid falling into that 88% mislabeling trap we saw earlier. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is that setting up ASMR requires a very specific sensory environment to be highly effective. Step 1. Put headphones on for that immersive binaural effect that creates the 3D soundscape necessary to trigger your relaxation pathways. Step 2. Keep the volume low and dim your screen. You want soft audio, not a bright blue light keeping you awake and fighting against your body's natural melatonin production. And step 3, start 15 to 20 minutes before bedtime. Give your nervous system adequate time to let that relaxation truly build and lower your heart rate. But perhaps the absolute most fascinating insight from the data is that these tools are not mutually exclusive. The ultimate combination might just be pairing them. A correctly timed low dose of melatonin to fix your biological timing, plus ASMR for arousal reduction as you lie in the dark. By combining them, you achieve a totally synchronized physiological state. You target the confused biological clock and the racing, anxious mind simultaneously, setting up the absolute ideal conditions for sleep. So, the crucial point is this: you have to match the tool to the actual problem. If you've been leaning on melatonin every single night with absolutely no success, do not just increase the dose out of habit. That is a massive sign your problem was probably never about timing in the first place. If you're perfectly on schedule but your mind is running a marathon, you need an arousal reduction tool, not a clock resetting tool. Which leaves us with this final, vital question to ask yourself tonight. Are you trying to fix a broken clock or a racing mind? Identifying exactly what is keeping you awake is the first real step to finally getting some rest. If this explainer helped clear things up for you, and you love learning the objective, structured science behind everyday topics, be sure to subscribe. We do the research so you don't have to. Until next time, rest easy.